I'm going to talk with you a moment about suffering and what it means that God's grace is sufficient. I'm sure in some way or another you've experienced suffering, whether it's from illness, the loss of someone you love, going through a trial, whether that be with pain or finances and not knowing how to make ends meet and how you're going to be able to get food, whatever the reason may be for the suffering. God is there in the midst of it, and He gives us what we need. Paul shares in his letter to the Corinthians about a thorn in the flesh he experienced. And 1 Corinthians 12:7-10, he talks about how a messenger of Satan came to buffet him, lest he be exalted above measure by the abundance of revelations given to him. And whatever this trial was, it was so severe that he pleaded with the Lord 3 times for it to go away, but it did not. Instead, God said, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness." And Paul learned that he could actually boast in his infirmities and reproaches and needs and distress and persecutions, because when he is weak, God's strength is made perfect in that weakness. So then Paul can say, "For when I am weak, then I am strong." I'm going to share with you an example from my personal life as well. About a month ago, I was experiencing extreme abdominal pain. It was pretty consistent throughout the whole day and would sometimes spike really bad and then it would fade. But by the evening it was so extreme, I was in complete tears, screaming and crying for God's help. So I went to the ER and discovered I had an infected appendix and needed surgery. Of course, there was a fear and this thought of surgery, never needing that before, experiencing it. But yet, there was also a sense of God's comfort and provisions. Immediately after the surgery, I still woke up in pain. The first few days were rough, but even 2 weeks later, I was still having pain. And even today, I was still experiencing some sharp pains. I'm learning now that I also have a sphincter Oddi valve that is spasming and causing pain. And what's happening is that valve lets the bile in from your organs to your intestines to help with the digestive system. But if it doesn't open, things get blocked up and thus causes pain. So with learning that, I need to be mindful to adjust my diet and make sure I avoid fatty foods and greasy foods. But I already have a lot of food allergies. And I have so many food allergies. It's easy to almost feel a sense of isolation when people want to eat somewhere and they all gather for food, but you can't join them because you're allergic, or you have to know enough in ahead of time to bring your own. But anyway, now there's a whole another list I have to add on top of the previous one. So that's a trial in itself, on top of the pain that leaves confusion and wondering how long will this be. But one of the things we also learn in suffering is how to help others when they go through something like that. For example, I was really fortunate to have a friend who had stomach problems in the past and needed surgery, because then she knew that bending down after surgery would be painful, so she got me a grabber. No one else I knew thought of such a thing, but that was such a blessing, and now I can be mindful of that when someone else needs it. And so there's just little ways like that that God provides for us. And as we learn how weak we really are, it helps us to depend more on Him and His strength. And that's perhaps the greatest blessing and lesson we can learn in the midst of it. God may not take away the suffering and the pain and heartache and trial, but He'll be there in the midst of it. He'll supply for our needs. His grace is truly sufficient, and we can trust in Him. And even when we don't understand why or how long or what the future will hold for us, but we can know that He's in control and He'll give us what we need. And in Him we'll lack nothing.